guys, this is Mr. Teej at 66's Movie Reviews. I am Mr. Teej at 66. Well, tonight is Devil's Night, or it will be when I upload this video. Kind of projecting myself into the future, I guess, a little bit, but anyway, besides the point. But what better time than to review the 1994 cult classic, depending on who you ask, 1994's The Crow, of course, starring the late Brandon Lee. For the 6 people out there who don't know the story of the tragedy that happened during the making of this movie, I'll summarize it for you. Basically, the lead actor, Brandon Lee, who was the son of Bruce Lee, the famous martial artist from the 70s, was killed on the set while making this movie. A blank gun, or a bullet that was supposed to be a blank, actually became a real bullet through contrived circumstances I won't go into. But basically, they didn't check all the bullets, and they handed it to one of the actors, and it was during a scene, ironically enough, where his character was supposed to be killed. That just creeps me out. Like, wow, that's weird. And anyway, the actor pointed the gun at him, fired at him, and the bullet went into his abdomen, and he died about 12 hours later on the operating table. Now, it was toward the end of filming, so I think like 2 weeks left of filming, so they were able to actually finish it using a combination of stunt doubles and actually some early CGI, and you'd never know the difference. I mean, I do because I watch the commentary, listen to the commentaries and all the documentaries, so I can see where they fit all this stuff in. But honestly, if you don't know, you really would have no idea that anything has been changed. But anyway, on to the movie, which is, what can be said, a classic of the 90s. I mean, it's of its time, but I don't think it's dated. There's a difference, the style is very much of the 90s, but unlike a lot of other 90s movies, it doesn't make me cringe to watch it. And I grew up in this decade, and, some of it does make me cringe. Like, I was watching Blade the other day, the first Blade film from 1998. Oh, Jesus Christ, that movie is so 90s, and sometimes it was a little like, oh, God. But this movie, it holds up. Like, I think because it has a certain amount of style to it, it is one of the most beautifully made films I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, just visually, it's almost a black and white film. I mean, they originally wanted to shoot it in black and white because the comic book that it's based on a comic book by James O'Barr, was in black and white, and they originally wanted to shoot it that way, but of course, studio pressure was like, no, that's never going to happen. But they came as close as humanly possible. All the color in this movie is pretty much bleached right out. There's no, like, blues or greens or yellows. It's all pretty much either white or black. I mean, occasional little bits of color here and there, but it is absolutely just, even if you hate this movie, even if you think it's one-dimensional and stupid, you have to give props to the production design, because it is one of the most visually fascinating films I've ever seen. Alex Proyas, the director, went on to do another classic 90s sci-fi sort of fantasy movie, Dark City, and that movie gets a lot of praise for its visuals, and they are pretty amazing, but I think The Crow looks way better. The images of this movie will stay with me forever. I mean, and of course we can't not talk about the soundtrack, which features like Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, The Cure, a few others I'm not thinking of. But unlike the vast majority of movie soundtracks, which I think are just garbage, just sort of like thrown in there to be like, oh, let's sell a song. The music in this movie really does help add to the mood of it. I mean, there's that great scene where Brandon Lee Oh, I should probably explain the plot of this movie first. I haven't really explained the plot. Basically, a rock star, Eric Draven, played by Brandon Lee, is killed by a vicious gang, and 1 year later he comes back to extract revenge for him and his fiancée, Shelley, and that's it. That's really the entire story. He hunts them all down and kills them. It's about as bare bones and simple a plot as you can possibly get. Anyway, as I was saying, the soundtrack in this movie really does add to the visuals. There's a great song by Nine Inch Nails called Dead Souls, which I believe is a cover of, I can't remember the band off the top of my head, where he's jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and it just adds to the mood of the scene. Like, it doesn't feel tacked on. I have no idea if he, like, actually, had these songs in mind, Alex Proyas, before he started filming, but they are absolutely flawlessly incorporated. The song during one of the action sequences is it's perfect. It adds to the mood. It's one of the best usages of soundtrack to visuals I think I've ever seen. Some people have criticized the plot for being, one-dimensional. It's like, well, what the hell do you want it to be? It's a freaking revenge movie. I think it's great that they have the balls to make it just a simple, straightforward, to-the-point revenge movie. The characters are simple, but they're not simplistic. I think they're likable and in some cases detestable. And the acting is absolutely great across the board. You've got Brandon Lee, who, it's just so sad to watch this movie and know what he could have been. It breaks my heart. It's not fair that, this had to be his final film and he had to go out the way he did. But man, if this was to be a final performance, what a performance. He is both terrifying and very funny. The movie has very funny sometimes. It has a very bleak, dark sense of humor to it, and he handles both of those roles perfectly. The action scenes he absolutely nails because he was actually a martial artist, just like his father. So all around, a fantastic lead. None of the other leads of any of the other Crow films, or the ones I've seen, have come close to him. You got Michael Wincott as Top Dollar, the villain, and he is such an underrated actor. He's such a great voice. Like, he's just a detestable scumbag that you just... There's an old saying, the great villains are the ones you love to hate. And I loved hating him in this movie. He is so much fun to watch. Just some of his lines are hysterical. And you've got Ernie Hudson, who plays a police officer, who sort of like befriends Eric Draven. And he is great. Ernie Hudson is one of the most underrated actors, I think, working today. He has such a sense of decency to him. He doesn't feel like, a big super cop or anything. He's just a guy, a regular everyman, and that's exactly what you need. He gave the same quality to Ghostbusters, the first two Ghostbusters films, and he brings it here too. It's really a shame his career hasn't, gone on to any great heights, because he is one of my favorite. He's such just so likable. I just smile. Like, he's a decent everyday guy. You've got Rochelle Davis, who plays sort of Brandon Lee or Eric Draven and Shelley's like adopted daughter, basically, not officially, but they were good friends, and she does a good job considering this is the only film she ever appeared in. I don't think she ever did TV, nothing. She just disappeared. I don't know what happened to her, but it's too bad because she was a good find. The action scenes are a blast. Just kinetic, energy. I mean, it's got that sort of Matrix vibe to it. This came out like what, 3 or 4 years before The Matrix, and you can tell they took a lot from this, like the big trench coats. It was a part of that whole series of Dark Avenger films, which was coming out around the mid-90s. You've got the first Batman, Tim Burton Batman, you had Darkman, The Shadow, this movie, I'm trying to think what else. I think that's it, but like there was that period where the Dark Avenger film was really coming into its own, I mean, you've got stuff like The Dark Knight too, filmmakers like Zack Snyder just really can't compete with this, because yes, it's dark, but it's not depressing. It's fun to look at. It's not so dour that it's a slog to get through. That's why I don't like Zack Snyder's Batman films, because they're so ugly and so... I hate the desaturated color. It just... The way he does it just something irks me about it, and I just really wish he would throw more color in there. I mean, this movie's in black and white too, but it's more aesthetically pleasing to look at. But I don't really know what else to say about this movie. This movie's an absolute class. I'm gonna say it's a classic. I mean, some people say it's more cult classic, even though it did very well at the box office. It made like $50 million on like a $20 million budget, and it's made a shit ton of money on DVD and home video and everything like that. So don't avoid the sequels. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I've only seen The Crow City of Angels, and that was garbage. It was just a ripoff of the first movie. It wasn't as stylishly directed or anything. The director, Tim Pope, never did anything ever again, or never directed another film again. Haven't seen any of the other films. I think mostly because one of them stars Edward Furlong from T2, and I'm sorry, when I looked at the cover, I started laughing when he's in the Crow makeup. It's just ridiculous. I can't... If I'm laughing at the cover, it's just like, nah, that's okay. I think I'll pass. But flaws, I mean... I guess the movie really... the characters are pretty thin. I really don't know. I mean, it's a comic book film. I don't know. I really can't think of anything too bad about the movie from this, at this point. It's just... I don't want to say it's a perfect film, but maybe the characters are kind of one note. But really, it's a tall tale, so what do you expect? This movie should have that. But I would give this movie like a 9. I just still think it's a blast. It's of its time, some people might say, it's dated, which it is, but it doesn't take away, unlike a lot of other 90s films, it doesn't take away its value. But yeah, 9 out of 10. If you haven't seen The Crow, what are you waiting for? Watch it tomorrow's night on Devil's Night, which Devil's Night, I forgot to mention what that is. It's a series, it's the night before Halloween. It's a series of arson events which are supposed to take place mostly in Detroit, I think around the country, but mostly it was centered in Detroit, which is where this movie is supposed to take place. It never really blatantly says it's Detroit, but Considering the comic book creator James O'Barr is from Detroit, it's pretty much assumed that it's Detroit. But yes, it's an absolute classic. Watch it if you've never seen it before. I don't know what you're waiting for. Anyway, this is Mr. T66, and I will see you next time.